Good day. This is Jerry Cave, and welcome to our podcast from the beautiful Accuracy and Media offices. We are going to have great topics today. We are going to talk about Fox News. We are going to talk about the first 100, and we are going to talk about, are you safe in America? And my guest today is Casey Aiken, star of The Legal Scene, star of media, an entrepreneur, and host of 21 This Week, the hardest hitting talk show in the Washington, D.C. area. Good morning, Casey.
Montgomery County, Jerry. Hardest hitting talk show in Montgomery County. But thank you for giving me a wider plug.
Well, we have a worldwide audience here, and I didn't want to narrow it down. And since Montgomery County is host to a lot of the people that run the government, it is very influential, even if we're not.
It's host to most of the bad ideas that infects Washington, D.C., is what I think it is.
You know, this repartee makes me think that we may have to rename this to be the Casey and Cave Show, and I'll give you top billing.
Thanks, Jerry. You've never said that before.
And I won't say it again. That was a terrible faux pas on my part. Let's get into Fox News. Everybody has talked a lot about it, but they have not said anything. The issue with Fox News is they were talked into committing seppuku, suicide, by the New York Times. And the issues with Bill O'Reilly had been out there for over a decade, and the New York Times ran an article on it. They got a boycott of Bill O'Reilly's show, brought it into the news. You know, it was funny. Rush Limbaugh pointed out how there's only a boycott of conservatives when they misbehave. There's never a boycott of liberals when they misbehave. What do you think about that, Casey?
Well, it goes beyond just a boycott, and this was a real plan for several years to try to bring down the rating king of conservative talk shows, because they know that O'Reilly stood for something, and they wanted to eliminate him. They wanted to eliminate his voice. They hate conservatives having a voice.
And you know what's interesting, Casey? Everybody has talked about this over the past couple of weeks, and nobody has come to the crux of the matter like you have. This was orchestrated, and it's multi-pronged. O'Reilly is just one of the things that has happened. But let me talk about O'Reilly for a minute. I can't believe he would put himself in a position for this. Whether he is guilty or innocent, say he's entirely innocent, people have known for decades in the media business, you can't put yourself in a position where somebody who is considered to be a minority in whatever case can make an accusation like this. You are guilty by accusation. He should never have put himself in a position where they could have said it. They could have said he did so-and-so, and he should have been able to say, no, that's not true. I've never been in a room alone with that person. I've never done this. I can't believe with all he had at stake that he would put himself in a position to be that vulnerable.
And he may not have, Jerry. The fact of the matter is, especially when it comes to the accusations of either racism or sexism, that you don't have to put yourself in a vulnerable position. You can be accused of it, and then it's impossible to deny. The fact that he may have looked at a woman and she took it as a flirtatious advance, it could be sexual harassment in the workplace. The term is hostile work environment. And liberals have expanded this to include almost anything. So we don't know the nature of the charges. We don't know the facts. But many of the colleagues said, that he said offensive things to them. Kristen, I can't think of the woman's name, who was on Fox and now is on CNN, said that the first time he made derogatory comments about her being a blonde on the air. Well, it could have been taken in a lighthearted manner because of the nature of the show. You don't know that because of the context of the story.
You're bringing up a great point. It does. Men in particular, white men in particular, are extremely vulnerable in this capacity. But those are the issues that are around it. If he said this or said that, what he needed to do is when they said that there were like advances made, he needed to be like Caesar's wife and beyond reproach. He should have been able to come back and said, I've never had lunch with her. I never was alone. I never went anywhere. I couldn't have said that. And then they would have had these peripheral issues that they couldn't prove, and I think he would have been in a more defensible position.
Well, that's true, and I hearken back to when I was a young attorney and I was going into a small town meeting with an undertaker. We went out to dinner. When I left the table for a moment, he did not feel comfortable being alone with my wife because of the reputation that it might have in a small town. People have to understand. They have to be very sensitive about their reputation.
And he is exactly right. You have to be like that. in business. And the thing is, in the broadcasting business, people have known this in the 80s, where they had a lot less at stake than Bill O'Reilly. Well, I say that, that's not really true. It could ruin a guy's career, and he could be the major breadwinner, and you put yourself in that position, they've known it forever. Let's broaden this. What happened? The New York Times went after him, but Bill O'Reilly was just part of it. There's been sort of a three-pronged effort here at Fox News, and we got to just back up for a second. People already accept that it's been around for a long time, and it has. But before that, there was the only voice that conservatives had was in talk radio. And before that, when they had the Fairness Doctrine, they didn't even have that. So they have talk radio, then they had Fox News, and Fox News is not only conservative. They will have liberals and conservatives on it. When you watch MSNBC, they don't have conservatives on it. They have a shill on there to give them cover, but they don't have much of a voice. Fox had both sides, although it definitely leaned to the right. The left has to bring it down, but what they did before O'Reilly is they brought down the architect of Fox News, and that was Roger Ailes.
Absolutely. This passion play has been going on for well over a year. They've been trying to bring down Roger Ailes and Fox in particular for a long period of time, and they finally have succeeded.
Well, Roger Ailes was the architect. He had the formula, and it really was carefully thought out. None of this was an accident. I call it boys, blondes, and noise. They have, men would be the anchors. They had great-looking, skinny, blonde women that were on the show frequently who were very smart, great contributors. They didn't have any unattractive women. And then they had all of the people in the field reporters were all men. When I say noise, what I mean by that is they didn't have National Review type arguments like with Bill Buckley. They had more emotional, hard-punching commentary with simple language. And that was the kind of thing, and that was the formula. And what I see them now is not only are they getting rid of Roger Ailes, but they're losing his formula.
Well, they've lost more than just his. They've lost more than just his formula. They've lost their key personality, on-air personality, especially with the loss of O'Reilly. O'Reilly was a ratings monster. He built up the brand. They didn't come out 20 years ago and immediately have success. He built up the brand because of he stood for something and he represented something. And now that they've brought him down, they're in trouble.
They're in big trouble. And let's talk about O'Reilly for a minute. O'Reilly was a personality. What works in television, what works in broadcasting is the one-on-one. Television is not broadcasting. It says that. But what it is, it's a one-on-one bond between the host and the viewer, or in radio, the listener. And it's usually a one-on-one. There might be people listening or viewing in their living room, but it becomes one-on-one. That's why it works with a host and not two hosts. If you remember, they had Hannity and Combs for a while, and that didn't work. It worked okay, but it really didn't work. It worked because of the lead-in from O'Reilly, like you mentioned. But what works much better is having a single person, and O'Reilly worked his tuchus off. He analyzed every second of the show to see what was working and what wasn't, and he had a formula down that was working, and he was the anchor for the rest of the evening's broadcast.
He connected with the audience, and you can see that not just in the ratings that his show had, but the fact that he was able to expand this brand beyond just the television show into books, into personal appearances. He developed his own brand, and he connected with the audience. Whether you liked him or not, you connected with him. He had a Q factor.
Bringing up whether you liked him or not is really a key factor, because what used to work when we were kids, and that was a long time ago, and we have to remind the audience, there was television when we were kids. You had to be really liked and really boring and vanilla. Now what you have to be is polarizing, which is why we work out so well. With O'Reilly, you loved him or you hated him. There was very little middle ground. And he was great at that, and he was a great interviewer and knew how to make his show work.
Well, that's true. But he also brought in balance, and he also challenged people. What you see now from the people that have substituted for O'Reilly over the past week is that they listen to the guests and then they agree with the guests. They never challenge the guest. This was O'Reilly's real brilliance, was that he was able to bring his own point of view and demonstrate that point of view, and that's what made him successful.
What I found to be fascinating was the same thing that happens at radio and TV stations is they did not groom a successor. And vacation time is the perfect time to do that. It's not just O'Reilly's vacation time, but you have Hannity, you had Megyn Kelly, you have the other people. They had opportunities to have a weekend person they could groom. They could groom him at night and on the weekends, or her, see how they do, work it out, and then bring them in for vacation. They would bring Eric Bowling in. Nice guy. I'm sure he's a lovely guy. I'm sure he works in some other capacities. He was terrible as the host. They would try Juan Williams. He was worse. They would try Laura Ingraham. Great guest, terrible host. So here is Fox News with all they have at stake, and 16 years of O'Reilly being at the top of the heap, 20 years he's been there, and they had groomed no successor.
Well, I don't think it's because they didn't try to groom a successor. They couldn't find one that had the right combination to match O'Reilly. And you said this very well. Laura Ingraham would have been a natural successor to Bill O'Reilly in this instance when O'Reilly leaves, because she's a conservative, she's a woman, she's served as an assistant to the Supreme Court, brilliant woman, but she didn't connect well as a host.
Right.
It's not that they didn't try, they just didn't find the right person.
When they have that much at stake and that many resources and that much money, they need to try until they get it done. And O'Reilly is not the only guy. You and I went to Catholic grade school, and at least in every other grade, there was a guy like O'Reilly, a little smarter than everybody else, who loved to irritate everybody and ask questions. Now, most of them got tempered in that relationship because someone punched them in the face later in the afternoon after school. But if they were able to withstand getting punched in the face, they could be an O'Reilly too.
Well, the one thing you're overlooking, Jerry, and is the obvious, which is that O'Reilly didn't want to groom a successor. He wanted to be king of the hill, and he shoved aside potential successors. Megyn Kelly was a good example. O'Reilly wasn't happy when she took that 9 o'clock slot. I mean, he wanted to maintain his dominance at that network.
True, but that's why O'Reilly is an employee and not the employer. So that was not a choice that he would get. What management's job, which is really, they don't have a lot to do, man. They just need to make sure they hire the right people and they groom them, and they didn't get it done.
Well, let's focus on management. I mean, Roger Ailes is out. The creator of the brand is out, and now you have the Murdoch boys managing this business. They have a different bent from their father, who grew up in the tough, bare knuckles environment of the newspaper wars of Australia and England, and then in America. So they have a different philosophy. They have a different point of view, and it's one that may not carry forward for the brand of Fox News.
That is the third leg on this three-legged bar stool that is coming apart. This is not like they have lost one leg of Roger Ailes and O'Reilly and this thing's going to tip over. It's going to collapse because the third leg is exactly what you've talked about. Rupert Murdoch was the dynamic person that put this empire together. And so many times you hear about a man or a woman that puts a business together and they turn it over to their son or sons, and the thing implodes. And you can see that happening. They think they're going to transition this into something that it's not, and they are willing to get away from the formula that works and start experimenting. And I'll tell you one mistake I see them making. Again, television is a one-on-one medium. It works one-to-one. What they've done is they're making three mistakes. A, they didn't have a successor to O'Reilly. B, they're going to put Tucker Carlson in there. But the thing I want to talk about now is they have moved the 5 out of what is basically daytime television, and they've moved it into prime time in the evening. 101 works in TV, 2-on-1 doesn't work. 5, a panel like that or a panel like The View can work in daytime when there's not that much competition. But now the 5 is going to be up against the one-on-one competition from the other liberal networks, and I think that is going to fail. Do you think it's going to make it?
I don't think it's going to make it, but they had no choice. As you mentioned in the segment before, they didn't have a natural successor. The fact that they have moved Tucker Carlson from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock and now to 8 o'clock is evidence of the fact that they hadn't prepared for the eventuality of O'Reilly leaving. Tucker Carlson is a very nice guy. He had a very good show at 7 o'clock. I think he's struggled in the 9 o'clock hour slightly because of the format. I think he's going to be a failure at 8 o'clock.
I think what they've done is they have they've hurt their own guy. And I think they've done that in a couple of ways. Tucker Carlson, if you watch his show, he's not as multidimensional as O'Reilly. He might have been able to work into it. I think he was underappreciated what they had him before, and they gave him his own show. He took off like a rocket. But now what they've done is they have brought him into O'Reilly, and it reminds me of a story that you and I have talked about a lot, and I'll tell the audience about. Back in the day, there was a local sportscaster in the Washington, D.C. metro area on the CBS affiliate named Warner Wolf. He was extremely popular. Warner Wolf then went to New York. There was a sportscaster named Glenn Brenner who was begging the station to be brought on. Finally, they said, Warner Wolf's going to New York. We'll bring you on. He says, I don't want the job. He goes, what do you mean? He says, I don't want to replace Warner Wolf, but I'll replace the guy who replaces the guy. Because they brought in somebody else, and the audience said, well, yeah, the guy's good, but he's not Warner Wolf. He was not successful. Glenn Brenner came in, brought a whole different twist, his own twist to being a sportscaster, and was a big success. Whoever follows O'Reilly is a sacrificial lamb in the first place, and they should have brought in somebody else, but they have now taken Tucker, who's doing great in his time slot. They've put him into O'Reilly's, and they're going to kill another hour of Fox News.
Well, they're killing their whole nighttime lineup. The fact is, again, O'Reilly was a ratings monster. Anybody who sat in the catbird seat right behind O'Reilly was going to have good ratings. Whether it was Megyn Kelly, whether it was Tucker Carlson, whomever that person was sure to get ratings from the lead-in that O'Reilly gave them. Now left at 8 o'clock, Tucker Carlson's going to have troubles. Their ratings are going to drop precipitously as a result of this.
What you're bringing up is the same concept you have in shopping centers. You have an anchor store. You have a Sears or a Neiman Marcus or something like that at the end of a shopping center. They get a much preferred square footage rate because they know they're going to bring in the traffic for all the other stores in between the anchors at the other end of the shopping center. The same thing is true in morning drive radio. That morning host brings in the audience. They try and recycle it into midday and the evening. O'Reilly provided that for Fox News. He was the lead-in. There were people going to come to the show before to consider it. And now that he's gone, they have really, you're correct, they have hurt their entire lineup. Where are conservatives going to go? Because Fox News with the Murdoch brothers, it's not going to have the same perspective. So where are conservatives going to go to get some balance?
Well, this is the real dilemma that conservatives have. That there is no one answer. People of my generation, I'm in my 60s. People of my generation are not going to be watching the news on their laptop every night. They're not comfortable with doing that. They still prefer watching it on their television. So they are going to have a difficult time making that transition. So will they totally abandon Fox? No, they won't totally abandon Fox, but they will look for other alternatives.
What I think will happen is I think another network will come up. I don't know how much of an audience it'll have. I think Fox News will have to go through some painful changes and see if they come back to getting a formula. The issue, but there will be a lot of hardcore conservatives that will go online. Even some of us old folks, Casey, are gonna transition there. Some of us are already there.
Well, Jerry, you're younger than I am, so
right.
So that gives you an advantage.
Casey and I are close in age. Everybody should know that. But you're only young once, but you can be immature forever, which is the secret of my youth. The key issue here is going to be not so much the people that are really involved and get the news, it's the ambivalent, the independents. Elections are won by the people in the middle they call independents, and they're not really independents. It's not a good term for it. They are ambivalent. They don't pay that much attention. So if they had something easy they could go into, like a Fox News on occasion and get something, that's one thing. If they have to go to a more esoteric, segmented news network on cable, that's going to be a problem. They're not going to be the people that get news online. So that is going to be the key metric, I think, that's lost for elections for conservatives.
You're absolutely right. Those people, as
Could you
do-
say that again? We had a little trouble. I didn't quite hear that. I've never heard
Jerry,
you say
I
that
abs- I said
before.
you're absolutely right, because those people you call the ambivalents, they have real lives. They don't really care about politics on a daily basis. All they want to know is whether or not some dumb politician is going to make their life harder.
Well, and the reason that we, Casey and I, are so into this is we are so old we don't have lives anymore. And the other thing is, when you grow up in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, you become a big sports fan, and our sports is news. One other disclaimer I want to put is that the rumors that Casey Aiken and Jerry Cave are competing in a bidding war to be the replacement for Bill O'Reilly are greatly exaggerated, unfortunately.
You would do a great job, Jerry.
Well, I was going to say the same about you, but be entirely insincere about it and hope that they charge me.
Well, I was too.
I want to talk about hate groups for a minute. We're going to switch gears. It's kind of the same thing. The left hates free speech, and the reason they hate free speech is because they like to put out their articles without having any counter argument because their information doesn't make sense. They are socialists, and we are on the 100th year anniversary of socialism. And the three things I know about it are over 100 million people have been killed in the name of socialism. Over 1 billion people have been enslaved, and it's cost trillions of dollars. So when they have that counter argument put up to their things that sound good, which they like to rule on intentions and not results, it doesn't hold up to that. The thing that comes to mind the most is how much they hate Trump. And they are hammering him up one side and down the other. What do you think about that, Casey? Is that going to continue? And what can they do about it?
Well, it will continue and continue and continue because, as you pointed out, the left hates Trump. This is the only thing that they have to promote is their hatred for the Republican Party and Donald Trump in particular, because they are bereft of ideas. They have no leadership within the structure of the Democratic Party, and all of the news that comes from Europe and comes from anywhere else in the world is a renunciation of leftist viewpoints.
It's happening everywhere. It's even happening in France.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. So there's a plus and minus for conservatives in the fact that Democrats are still doing this. I was in a debate on Friday night with a guy who had actually, youngest guy had been in the Jack Kennedy's administration. And he said, I'm a Democrat. And I go, well, back then, so was I. So were a lot of us. Our communities were. But we didn't leave the Democratic Party. It left us because it's gone so extreme to the left. And they have lost the state houses. They have lost the governor's mansions. They have lost the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. There isn't much left to lose. And what I find it's good for Republicans, but it's bad for the country, is that they don't realize what they've lost and they haven't changed their tune.
What's going to happen, Jerry, is the more and more they beat this drum, the more and more people are tuning out. They even recognize the fact that they can emphasize their hatred of Trump because they're going to start losing viewers. People have heard this same song over and over again. They're going to tune out.
It's unbelievable, but ever since Trump was clearly going to win the primary, they went on MSNBC, and I watch Morning Joe pretty frequently because it's the only left-wing thing I can tolerate, and it actually has a great format. But they just went to hammering Trump 24/7, 3 hours a day, every day, and it's boring television.
It is definitely boring. It's so boring. I switch to the Business Channel on CNBC because at least you get a snippet of news and some real discussion about the policies that are going to affect us. Taxes, free trade, whether or not the Fed is going to increase interest rates. Those are the things people are truly worried about. They're worried about their economic freedom.
It's funny. You have interesting, boring, and painful. And you have gone to painful, which is to go look at the news and to avoid boring. That's how painful.
That is very painful.
Boring has become more painful than painful.
When you like talking about taxes, you're embracing painful.
Yes. So Trump has had a good first 100 days, although the media will never tell you about it. He has canceled TPP. He has appointed a Supreme Court justice, just like he said he would. They have taken on sanctuary cities. They're telling them they're going to defund them. take away their grant money, which is brilliant. And they are emphasizing border security. Illegal immigration is down, and the stock market is up.
And you forgot the fact that they've rolled back regulations and they've cut the federal budget. So those are two additional points that have been overlooked and underplayed by the national media.
It's a great idea. And illegal immigrants know that they're going to be reluctant to travel 1,000 miles and spend $10,000 to come to the border here where Jeff Sessions may not let them in.
Well, I think this is why they opposed Attorney General Sessions so viciously during his confirmation hearing, because they knew that he would be a hardliner on immigration policy, and they knew that he was a man of his word, that he would enforce the laws that were on the books, not create new laws, just simply enforce the laws that are already in place.
And over at Homeland Security, Kelly said the same thing, and he says, look, Congress, if you want to have different laws, go ahead and make them. We're enforcing the laws that they have now. There was a great interview over the weekend. Mulvaney was being interviewed by Chris Wallace. It was really fascinating, and Ning, and I've been waiting for a guy to say this for a long time. He is badgering him back and forth on the issues and trying to get Mulvaney to say something stupid. And Mulvaney finally stops him, and he says, look, I just met you. You seem like a nice guy, but I'm not negotiating this with you on television. We're going to negotiate it with the Congress, and then I'll come back and tell you what it's going to be. Well, it was beautiful.
Well, Chris Wallace is more and more showing his liberal roots, that he grew up in CBS News and NBC News as he conducts his Sunday morning news show.
What I have said for a long time is that journalists are like bullies, and whenever you confront them like bullies, they fold. So when you have somebody that has the guts to do that, like Donald Trump, when Newt Gingrich did it down in the last election cycle in South Carolina, Trump does it relentlessly, and now we got another Irishman, Mulvaney, doing it, and he did a great job. Let's wrap the show up. You got any final comments or a parting shot that you want to tell everybody about?
Well, I think the important thing is what's going to happen this upcoming week with the budget and the budget negotiations. Trump has set out a very vigorous agenda to get funding for the wall included in the budget resolution. It's going to be a tough negotiation.
Well, they got to do it. They got to keep the government going. It would be terrible branding for them. This has been a great podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. For Casey Aiken, this is Jerry Cave, wishing you a great day. Thank you.